Hello and welcome to the Physical Preparation Podcast. I am your host, Mike Robertson, and I'll be joined on the line later today by Matt Johnson. Now, before we jump into this week's show, and before I talk about, what is going on in my world, I just want to give a quick shout out to any parents that are listening to this show, especially parents that have kids. I don't know about you, but this is an incredibly trying time in the sense that, right now, our house is one part workstation, one part school station, one part just household that you live in. It's just chaos reigns. And I don't care how much you try and control it, how good of a job you're doing of trying to balance everything. This is just stressful, I think, for all of us. So if you're a parent and you are managing all this, man, kudos to you, because it is not easy right now. And I hope you are doing well. Now, good stuff. Let's talk about this week, what's going on. I'm excited. Assuming all goes to plan, May 1, we are reopening our doors. And I don't know how many times I've said this. I sound excited, and then I just keep hearing that our governor is kicking the can down the curb until we know what's going on. So in a perfect world, we will be reopening IFAST doors on May 1. In the interim, I'm not ashamed to say I've got one or two athletes that I've been kind of sneaking in on the side, and not because I'm trying to side hustle money, but their contracts are on the line, their livelihood is on the line. So the last thing I'm going to do is let them sit around for 30, 45, 60 days without doing anything and then have to go and play high level basketball. So a little bit of coaching this week, and it's about to crank up a little bit more as things go on, because I think we're going to get a new kid in for pre-draft that I'm pretty excited to work with. I can hopefully talk more about that later on, but kid that I think has a ton of raw potential, and I think somebody that hopefully I can have a big impact with, because he's a lither, skinnier human being, amazing scoring ability, amazing shooting touch, and flashes of amazing potential, but just needs to grow into his body a little bit. So hopefully somebody that get my hands on, not screw him up, and if all goes well, hopefully make him a little bit better basketball player. Also, I got 2 talks this week. Very excited to give my presentation for the Sounders Sports Science Seminar on Wednesday. This will have already passed when you listen to it, but hopefully I can find a YouTube link or something that I can provide for you if you didn't see it live, that you can hear me talk a little bit about my thoughts on what is winning in the private sector. And I think Sean has done a really good job of creating a topic that is universally applicable, but we're going to get insights from all these different practitioners about what is winning in their neck of the woods. So I'm really excited to hear some of the other talks, and hopefully what I have to say is useful to everybody else. So I've got that talk on Wednesday, and then on Thursday, I do a roundtable for Play Basketball, where we're going to be talking about all things hoops, how to get athletes in shape in the first place, how to retrain them after a big layoff, like we've all been seeing, how to manage athletes in season, off season. So lots of cool stuff there. And I'm very excited to be a participant in both of those events. So hopefully you get to check those out. And then, big podcast week too. This is 3 shows getting recorded. So I've got Alex Wani, I've got a guy named Stephen Jones, and I have Maria Mountain all coming up. And even if you are not familiar with them, I can guarantee you they're each outstanding individuals, and I think they are going to make for some awesome, awesome interviews. Last but not least, I am taking major strides in the Complete Coach Cert to try and get CEUs. And if you have heard me talk about this before, I was probably a little bit frustrated, because I feel like a lot of times when I use the word certification and I go to a certifying body, they don't like that word being in the title. So my goal is to try and somehow get the Complete Coach Certification certified for CEUs or accredited for CEUs, because I realize it's not a cheap item. I think it's a very valuable item, and I've gotten some really great feedback on it just this week from different people who have been going through it. But, ultimately, if you shell out $600, $800, $1,000 for a course, you want to be able to get CEUs for it. So I literally have the NASM cert right here. So I'm going to fill that out, work on that. I'm going to work with the NSCA. I wish my boy Scott Caulfield was still in there. I figured he could at least give me an attaboy or hopefully a good word of reference. But I don't know what's going to happen. Fingers crossed. If you've already got it, keep your fingers crossed, because hopefully we can get you some CEUs in the process. And if you're looking to get it, hopefully, down the line, we'll be accredited for CEUs and we'll be rolling on that front as well. So, man, that's really all I have for this week. I don't want to ramble on and on about cooking and doing puzzles and playing Castlevania, because that's been a good portion of the last 4 to 6 weeks of my life. But I hope you are doing well. I hope when you listen to this, you are, on the right path to getting back to some semblance of normalcy. And, if you ever need anything from me, shoot me a message, shoot me a DM. I'd love to hear from you, and hopefully I can help you out in some small way. So enough from me. Short commercial break, and then we will talk to the amazing, the astounding, the awesome Matt Johnson. One thing Bill Hartman and I have talked about for years now is the power of mentorship. Early on, I didn't have a mentor to shape or guide me, or most importantly, help me find the blind spots in my own training and coaching. But luckily, after many years of trial and error, I found Bill, and my professional success exploded as a result. But the downside to the mentorship process, at least professionally, is that it can be pricey. For private mentees that I work with, it costs anywhere from $3.99 to $5.99 per month to work together. And while I know the results go far beyond that price, the fact of the matter is that just won't work for a lot of folks. So when Bill and I sat down a while back, we asked ourselves a really tough question. How can we help shape the future of the industry and truly make it great? And beyond that, how can we create amazing content yet make it affordable to virtually every trainer or coach out there? And the answer for us was simple: restart iFast University. Here's what you'll get when you become a member of iFast University. One update each month from myself and Bill. This could cover anything from improving exercise technique to writing better programs and everything in between. Twice per month Q&As, where Bill and I will personally answer your questions to help you become better at training, coaching, or even running your fitness business. A Facebook group where you'll be surrounded by like-minded trainers and coaches who are serious about getting better, and access to the iFastU archives, where you'll be able to watch literally hundreds of pieces of content from the iFast team over the years. This blend of content and Q&A is specifically designed to help make you the best trainer or coach possible. If you're interested in learning more, head on over to ifastuniversity.com to get signed on. We'd love to have you on board. Matt Johnson joined the Butler athletic staff as men's basketball strength and conditioning coach in July of 2018. In this position, Johnson serves as a member of the men's basketball staff and oversees the program's strength and conditioning, while also assisting with rehabilitation of injured student athletes and working with university partners on nutrition and supplement education. Prior to his time at Butler, Matt also worked at George Washington University for 5 years and Montrose Christian School's nationally prominent basketball program as well. In this show, Matt and I take a deep dive into the world of basketball. We start with talking about why, even if you want to specialize as a coach, you need a GPP phase first. How training shifts in the in-season versus the off-season, why you should work to quantify the game, and the value of having a couch in your office. Matt is incredibly well-spoken, and I think you're going to take a ton away from this show. But enough for me, let's do this. Matt, thanks so much for coming on the show here today. Super excited to have you on. Could you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, Mike, really appreciate being on the show here. Big honor for me. Been listening to your show for a long time now. A little bit about me, who Matt Johnson is. I'm a 13-year strength and conditioning coach. A lot of my experience is primarily in the collegiate world, but my path has been pretty unique. I used to be a business owner at an LLC, trained athletes as young as 11 years of age, all the way up to, collegiate age. And then my high school experience as well. Worked at a small school in Rockville, Maryland called Montrose Christian. A lot of people know Montrose because that's where Kevin Durant went. I didn't train Kevin. I can't take credit for that. I didn't train Kevin, but just an unbelievable stock of basketball athletes there as well.
Whatever, man. You should just leave that part out.
Yeah.
Just leave that part out. Like, oh, yeah, by the way, you might have heard of that school. That's where Kevin Durant went. And just leave it at that. Well, awesome, man. Awesome. So talk to me. What led you to the world of physical preparation? Like, how did you get started in all this?
When I look back at it, it all started with failure for me. I was 15 years old. I think most 15-year-old boys find the weight room or the Nautilus circuit, at the YMCA, and you kind of just putter around and go from, station to station. I picked up a basketball when I was 6 years old and just started swatting at it like most little kids do in the driveway. And just loved the sport, just grew up every year, all the developmental teams. But my junior varsity year, it was tough for me. I didn't make my junior varsity high school team. After the tryout was over, spoke to the coach and it's like, hey, coach, why didn't I make the team? And he's like, hey, Matt, to be honest with you, you were skilled. You were skilled enough. You just weren't strong enough. You weren't fast enough. The other kids were just stronger and faster than you. And so, that led me to kind of just leveling up in the weight room. And I found this guy by the name of Lee Taft. And a lot of people know Lee, the speed guy.
Yes.
At the time, Lee was up and coming and, had a little garage gym. It would train athletes out of his driveway. And he actually then created a small facility. So it just from my years being an athlete, I think that's where the passion started and the rest was history.
Yeah, I love it. So talk to me about your career path, because 13 years in, you've been a few places, but I love for young coaches to hear about the journey that the people on this show have been on, because it's not just like, oh yeah, I got like a cert and I did an internship and now I'm working in the NBA. Or I'm working at Butler University. You know what I mean? So give them an idea of the process and the path that you went on.
Yeah, man. So after undergrad, went to, school at Marywood University for exercise science. And, you kind of just have this spot, right, where there's two roads and you kind of have to decide which one to take. Do I want to take the clinical route and work in an exercise testing lab, or do I want to take the practical route? And, for me, I decided the practical route. Just being in the weight room just excited me. I just loved the weight room just as a youngster, like I said, but it was a hard process. Earning your spurs, I call it. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of turmoil. I worked for free at 3 different places before I ever collected any money doing this.
Wow.
My first job that I made any money was for $8,000 and it was a 10-month position. So, but I look back at that, Mike, and that's really important to develop those calluses.
Yeah.
Right. So anybody in the iron game understands, you look at somebody's hands, if they're strong, they probably have calluses on their hands because they've picked up the barbell and they've lifted a lot of weight, a lot of repetition.
Yep.
And same thing as a coach, you have to go through that adversity. You have to go through the early mornings, the travel, the god-awful pay, to be honest with you, to develop those calluses so you're able to persevere this profession.
Yep. Love it. So before we get into this, talk to me about the sport of basketball, because I don't know, between you and I, it seems like you kind of like it a little bit. So talk to me about that. What was it about basketball that brought you into that world?
Wow, man. Sometimes a sport strikes your fancy, right? And you just fall in love with it. And just growing up, I played every sport. I ran the 400. I threw discus. I threw shot put. I played lacrosse, soccer, baseball growing up. I was just, kind of Johnny do-it-all. But just always had a special feeling about basketball. And so when I had the opportunity to be a strength and conditioning coach, it was like, hey, I want to train all different sports because I felt like that was important for my development as a coach. I didn't want to specialize too early.
Yes.
Where we talk about that with athletes, right? Hey, early specialization, that's bad, right? You don't want to do that. Well, I believe the same thing as a coach. So a lot of my early years of experience were just wide ranging, a lot of different sports, but it just is a really fun sport to train. Just the bodies, honestly, the personalities, the backgrounds, the guys you get to meet, and you can learn a lot from your athletes, right? And it's a jack of all trades sport where it's a mixed bag of energy systems, mixed bag of injury preventative mechanisms, and strength and power and stuff. So I like the challenge that comes with training with basketball. Where, not to say other sports aren't, challenging, but for example, the season, the basketball season, that's very undulatory, right? And it's all over the place. So where if you're a track athlete, you're preparing for a meet probably on Saturday.
Yeah.
If you're a football player, you're probably preparing for one game on a Friday night or Saturday morning, right? So it's I love the challenge that comes with the sport as well.
Yeah, I love that, man. So this is a question that I ask basically every physical prep coach, especially with regards to basketball that comes on the show. What are the biggest differentiators for you when it comes to in-season versus off-season training?
Yeah, it's funny. I have a few things, but I'll jump to the top of the list for me. It's all about volume, where the off season, everybody's doing the same volume, right? And you're going through your schemes and your hypertrophy, your strength, your max strength, your contrast, all that stuff, and everybody's able to kind of just absorb the same volume of workload in the weight room. Where now you get in season. Now, in season for me, I'm a big believer in long-term athletic development. So in season is very important in that process where it's the longest uninterrupted period of training with our guys. Right. Typically after the season's over, they're going home. They're, getting a little bit of downtime, and then they're coming back in the summertime and hitting it. So what I do in season is we have what's called facilitative methods. And facilitative methods is basically taking into account that workload that each athlete is experiencing on the court. So we pool our guys into different buckets. And A group is our high minute players. Those are the studs, 30 plus minutes a game. They're always out there, right? Our B group, those are the mid minute guys. Maybe, 6th man, 7th man, 8th man. They're playing some, but they're out there for just a few exchanges. Right. And the C group, those are the low minute guys. Those are the guys with DMP next to their name, did not play. Right. So they're next to me throwing up the 3 goggles and just hanging out. Right. And so how we use those pools is there's an assigned load to those pools. Okay. So for example, everybody's squatting. Everybody squats. Everybody works. I'm a big fan of that in terms of our training culture. Everybody's doing 4x4, 4 sets, 4 reps at squat. The A group, they're going to squat at 65%. The B group, they're going to squat at 75%. The C group, they're going to squat at 85%. So they're really getting some good load on their back, and they're training hard. And so anybody that knows about the body and knows about training, if you're training consistently, you're not going to be sore from doing 16 reps at 65%. Right. So don't be fearful that your starter is going to be sore from squatting. Right. He'll be sore from squatting if he doesn't squat for 2 weeks under a load, under a stimulus. But so just sustaining that work. And then I would also say this complements the facilitative methods, Mike, is I'm a big fan of microdosing. Right. And in season, our sessions, to be honest with you, is 30 minutes. And so guys are coming in, they're hitting their prep work. A lot of guys have correctives and things like that they go right to, and we get to work. That was a big shift for me in the sport of basketball, where early on in my career, you don't understand the level at which these kids are pulled. They're pulled in so many different directions, right? Film study, skill work, tutors, classes, community service, all this long laundry list of things that they have responsibilities in. And obviously the weight room is a part of that, and sports medicine, treatment times, all this stuff. So early on in my career, I always believed, hey, a session is an hour. Right. Where in season, it's 30 minutes. Now our training frequency is 2-3 times a week. We're trying to get 2 to 3 sessions or lifts in a week. So
I love that. Mm-hmm. And the other point that you made too, that I think is really valuable, is you talk about somebody being sore after like a 4x4 workout. Well, look, like part of that is what do they do in the off season to prepare for that? You know what I mean?
Yes.
If a guy is underprepared going in, well, then anything's going to make him sore. Versus the guy that has worked their tail off in the off season, has stayed with their training through the preseason. Well, yeah, they get into the end season, 4x4 at 65. Yeah, there's competing demands and other stuff going on, but they're not sore after that session, right? Like you said, it's facilitating and maintaining their strength and their power output so they can play at a high level the whole season.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. I mean, that's the thing is like players are made in the off season, right?
Yeah.
And a huge part of being a player is being durable.
Yes.
Having that resiliency. So you can't train like a little daisy in the summertime.
Right.
you gotta push, you gotta grind, you gotta work hard, you tap into this, high threshold in work capacity.
Yeah.
And so then we're just translating all that work capacity and durability from the summertime to now the season, right? And for me, it's like, obviously that C group, the way I sell it is like, hey, man, unfortunately, you're not playing. Like, I feel for you. And believe me, when I was a college athlete, I was in your position. I didn't play much either.
Yeah.
But what do you want? What do you want to do? Do you just want to have one off season, or can we have 2 off seasons? Right. So in terms of that athlete's development, there's a reason Matt Johnson didn't make the junior varsity team. He wasn't strong enough, or he wasn't fast enough. Well, a lot of times, these college players, that's why they don't play either. Maybe they're 20 pounds underweight for their position or undersized for their position. So they need a double dose of that hard work and that, that really grinded out off-season stuff.
Well, here's the other great thing about that too, is it gets them to focus on what they can change or improve upon in that moment, right?
Exactly.
Because if you're not playing and you're just festering on the fact that you're not playing, like that sucks. Versus if you've got this other carrot where it's like, hey, you're not playing, but let's use this as a time to hone and work on your body and make it so where, hey, man, coach can't look past you next year. I think that's really empowering for the athlete as well.
Yeah, and that's, honestly, Mike, huge life lesson.
Yeah.
Huge life lesson where it's like, hey, you could always, work harder. You could always make more money. You could always, get a job with a better title and better benefits and things like that. Always try to be better. It's not just, we're building life skills in the weight room too. We're not just building athletes, we're building people. So, that's kind of another takeaway from that.
I love it. So one thing that you've been talking a lot about recently on social media is this concept of being able to quantify the game. So talk to me a little bit about that. How are you guys using GPS or whatever technology you have to quantify the demands of basketball?
Yeah, so this is something, that I've become very passionate about, where it's like it's hard to manage your athletes if you're not measuring them, right? Mm-hmm. And so the data that we're getting from the Connexion GPS platform that we use here is just completely mind-blowing. Yeah. It's like, just to be honest with you, where, I can take a 5.5 month snapshot, if you will, right? Where in 5.5 months, and that includes some of our preseason, where we had some athletes over 400 miles on the court.
Oh my gosh.
And, that included all practices, all games, over 12,000 jumps, right? Wow. It counts, it bands every jump, right? So it bands the low jumps, 1 inch, little small coupling jump, right? It counts that, but that's still stress.
Sure.
Right. And obviously, the big, rim rockers and big, max effort jumps as well. And it also tracks top end sprinting, where the game is changing. It's becoming more positionless and people are trying to play with more pace. So that increases their possessions. And so now they have a higher chance or higher likelihood of outscoring their opponents. So, hey, if we get more shots at the basket, we have a better chance to win. Yeah. And we've had some athletes over 600 top end sprints, right? Wow. Top end sprint is over 13 miles per hour. So just in the sheer workload, right? I mean, that's 5.5 months. I mean, I'm not even counting, 5-on-5 open gym in the summertime where these guys sometimes have to be kicked off the court after 3 hours of running open gym, right? Skill workouts, right? Huge part, necessary part, right? Not even counting that. I'm not even counting the conditioning modes we utilize. So it's, that's one part of it, Mike. And then the other part is like, it's unbelievable how much load a player accumulates just preparing for the game, right? And I'm talking about game day, right? Right. And so I started looking at this where anybody that knows basketball, players start getting out on the court about 90 minutes before tip-off. Yeah. Right. And so they get out there and they start, working on their handles or working on their float game or working on their mid-range or whatever. And what I found was there was a significant load that a lot of these players accumulate before the jump ball is even thrown up.
Yeah.
Right. And so what we found was an average of 2.2 miles was accumulated before they even played the game. Right.
Wow.
And so you think about that, man, it's like, what level of preparation or what level of warming up or whatever is necessary to play.
Yep.
Right. Because now we're asking these guys, hey, man, you got to give me 120% effort. I want you diving on every loose ball. I want you sprinting in transition. I want you giving everything you have. And so they're already depleted before they even play.
Yeah.
Right. And so that really led to some great conversations to then alter how we warm up. Yeah. And honestly, it made changes how I dynamically stretch the guys. Right. Where before we did a very intensive warm up. Full sweat, very dynamic, skipping, locomotion, activation, mini bands, all this stuff, right?
Right.
And I used the data to knock it down, right? And so what I'm saying is that's the great thing about the technology is you are no longer going off of feel, you're going off of quantifiable evidence and data.
Yeah. And that's such a huge point because I actually was on this podcast a couple of days ago, and the guy asked me like, well, what do you do? How do you get somebody to understand RPE and that sort of thing? And I said, sometimes it's not even about them subjectively understanding it. It's them objectively understanding it, giving them a concrete number using, like, in my case, I was talking about VBT and just saying, look, like, this is our cutoff. This is our threshold. And it makes your life so much easier because now, again, it's not subjective. It's not touchy-feely. Oh, this is what I think. No, this is what I know. This is what you're doing. And then from there, you can make a more educated decision that's going to help your athlete perform at a higher level.
And that's what it's all about, man. I mean, right? Like, especially with my position, like, it's all about winning and losing.
Yeah.
Because if we don't win, I'm not here.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the reality of it, right? So it really allows you to peel the layers back, really go down some rabbit holes with the data. And I will share this with you too. And this has like been great as well, where every drill of a practice, we've been looking at the mechanical load of those drills.
Yeah.
Right. And so what a lot of people look at is like, man, 5-on-5 is so bad for them. Right. Yep. No, actually, like I just mentioned, it's very transition, pace of play oriented now, where people are going, they're trying to cross half court, kick it to one guy, and James Harden is throwing it up, right? For a shot. Right. Where the stressful stuff is sitting your athletes in a shell drill, right? Yeah. And you're in a shell drill for 15 minutes and you're in a defensive stance and you're guarding the ball and, you're switching to, your gap slides and moving around the court, things like that. Yeah. That is so physically demanding on their body. Yes. Right. And so that's a great thing we've been using with the data is we've created a drill list of high, medium, and low load or biomechanical load drills. Yeah. Where now the coaching staff will see that and say, okay, we can do shell drill, but man, that is really physically exhausting on the guys. Like, instead of doing that for 12 minutes, like, let's just sit them in shell for 5 minutes. Yeah. And it's going to be a really great 5 minutes, high intensity, high energy. They're going to be flying around, and we're just going to cut it at those few reps.
Yep. I'm so glad you talked about that because so I first learned about that kind of concept when I was in the soccer world, right? And it's the same thing in soccer. People assume, oh, full field, 11v11, like that's like the most intense thing. And it can be, right? Especially like you'd be most worried about somebody like popping a hammy, right? If they do like an 80-yard sprint. Mm-hmm. But in fact, what you find a lot of times in like full-sided 11v11, like that's where people can hide the most.
Yes.
Yeah, somebody doesn't want to run or they want to take a possession off. Like that's where you do it. The same thing in basketball, right? 5-on-5. Sometimes you can let your guard down and kind of stand up a little bit. But man, you go like 2v2 or something like that. Man, a lot of cuts, a lot of change of direction, accelerations, decelerations. Like, man, sometimes that's when you're the most gassed. You're like, dude, I'm done after that.
Yeah. And so, with us, like, if I could frame it into this one message, like why we use the technology is I would frame it like this. The college game and the NBA game are entirely different, right? Yeah. Where the NBA game or the NBA game or season, right? Excuse me, is they are playing more than they practice.
Yes.
Right. Where they're always playing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so their practices are very, very minimal. Right.
Yeah.
And where with us, like the college level, we are practicing more than we play.
Yeah.
Right. So, for example, like we had 105 practices this season, and we played 33 games.
Okay.
Right. So what I'm getting at is the majority of the load that we're stressing our athletes with come from practice.
Yep.
And so we need to be great. We need to be great on those practice days because that is injury prevention, right? Where we can't push them closer and closer and closer and closer to the edge. Eventually, they're going to fall off, right? And now they're in sports medicine, and now they're hurt, and a heavily touted prospect isn't any good on the sideline.
Exactly.
Right? So that for me is like the tremendous power in this technology is where, a lot of people ask me how I use it. I use it to prepare our team, right, and help the coaching staff practice better and more efficiently. Where the NBA guys, I think they're using the technology more to recover from games.
Yep.
In terms of evaluate their players' readiness and just where they are.
Yeah, that's great stuff, man. So I want to shift off just the training side of this because I think the collegiate level is so unique. So if we can kind of unpack this for a minute, you think about high school, right? Most high schools are going to have one, maybe two really good players, right? And somebody that can maybe play at quote unquote the next level. You get to the NBA level, everybody's good, right? Like everybody is good. Even the guy that's 15th man on the bench never gets to actually play. He's still really good. But the college level is unique in the sense that all these guys are pretty good, right? They were probably the best kid or one of the best kids on their high school team, but they're also out of their comfort zone, right? They're young men. So you take all these factors and you're trying to build up a team and you're trying to build a culture. So this is a long way of me kind of getting to the question that is, how do you go about building culture into your basketball programs?
Man, I love this question, Mike. It's something that I'm really passionate about is you got to remember that there's a person that wears the jersey.
Yeah.
Right. And so early on, I think I just viewed this whole thing as like, they're a bunch of athletes. And now 13 years later, like I view them all as people.
Yeah.
And, that the relationship aspect, the power that you have as a coach and just how much mentoring you can do and how you can really just show your investment level to a kid, I think is really empowering to them.
Yeah.
When you captivate their mind and you instill this belief, one thing I found, they will fight for you.
Yeah.
They will fight for you. And so, I use this example, right? Everybody does triphasic training, right? Mm-hmm. You have the same program and we'll use two different coaches. We have Coach A and Coach B. Coach A is very coarse, aggressive, demeaning, yell at you, spit. Have Coach B, mentor, investor, connector, growth mindset, super positive, super energetic, right? Who gets better results? They do the same program.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we talk about intent, how that's so important, how athletes need to train with intent, right? Coach A's athletes aren't training with intent, right? Because they don't like the guy, right? They don't like being around the guy, right? That guy makes them sick.
Yep.
Right. Where Coach B, right, his athletes, they love him, right? They trust him. They understand that, hey, Coach B, man, he's such a great guy. Like, I'll do anything for that guy. Right. So when you captivate kids' minds and you touch their heart, they'll fight for you. They'll work hard for you. You don't ever have to worry about intent.
Yeah. What have you done, do you think, like, to help you connect with people better? Because, again, the collegiate sports scene is so unique in the fact that you're just getting kids from all over and different races, different religions, backgrounds, upbringings, rich, poor. Like, how have you found, or what has helped you be successful and forge those relationships with those young men?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I have ever bought every step of the way is a seat or a sofa in my office.
Okay.
it's a different environment where you can sit down and it's just, you can just do this, do what we're doing right now, just talk, and, you mentioned backgrounds, understanding, someone's backgrounds. I think, that's really important when you start figuring out that everybody is a product of their environment, right?
Yeah.
And, everybody that is a part of our lives makes an imprint on us, right? So sometimes it's not the kid that's, not a hard worker or has a poor work ethic. Maybe he never did strength and conditioning because he went to a small public school and they didn't have a formalized strength and conditioning coach. Or maybe he didn't have money to hire a private strength and conditioning coach in high school, right? So sometimes I think we view that, it's like, oh man, that kid's a jerk or he has a bad attitude or whatever. But, that it makes sense, right? That's why he's skeptical. It just hasn't been a part. So to answer your question, man, just, those sit down combos and just, I'm always at practice. I'm always on the road and just always around these guys in terms of just, building that bond, building that connection. It's not just me seeing them for those 60 minutes during a session or 30 minutes. If it's in season, like I'm always a part of their lives. They always see me.
Yeah, that's huge, man. So you've obviously spent a lot of time with and around basketball coaches over the years. So I want to know, what have you learned from some of the hoop coaches that you've spent time with?
Man, this is super important for any strength coach, like the skill trainers, right?
Yep.
And the basketball coaches or coaches in general, they should be your best friend as a strength and conditioning coach. And what I mean by that is the better you understand the sport, right? The better you understand how they look at the sport and how they develop the sport, the better you can be as a strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah.
And, I freely admit this is not something I knew starting off. I had to learn this, and this was an acquired trait where over the years I've figured out that basketball coaches, they look at things a lot differently than we as strength coaches, look at things, where basketball coaches, everything is very much based on kinematics, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you ask them like, hey, evaluate this player for me, they're gonna talk about like, hey, the ball comes off his hand like this, or when he misses, it's a reboundable miss, or he doesn't have great hands and dexterity, with the ball and things like that. Where strength coaches, what we do is we are based on kinetics. Yeah. We're measuring everything, right? Yep. And so how can we be better is highlight those kinematics to our coaches, right? Because that's information that they're receiving very well because that's how they communicate, right? And so some great stuff I've learned, like, for guards, it's a fist fight to get open. It's a foot fight to score. Right.
Yeah.
And, it's funny, like you hear that and it's like, wow, like whenever I hear stuff like that, I start thinking of exercises or programming strategies. Right. And how important hand strength, right? Yeah. Arm strength is for a guard, because it makes a lot of sense, right? Man, you got to get open to even get the ball. Absolutely. To score. Yep. Right. And so then, your first step, and then maybe a couple of those gather steps to, get in front, get the defender on your hip and just close them out to the, where it's the rim, you and them. Yeah. And so now you can score. Right. Yeah. And, the other thing that I've learned along the way is, like, for example, rebounding. There's different type of rebounding traits where there's area rebounders, right? Where those are your telephone booth athletes, where they just jump up and they get snag it, right? Ball, yeah. There's also range rebounders, right? And those are your, like, Ben Wallace, like if you remember him back in the day, like he was an absolute beast, like just like going around and just grabbing everything, right? Yeah. And so there's different skill there, right? And an athlete is built a different way. So, like, I've just enjoyed over the years just picking the coaches' brains and just like watching skill workouts and things like that, because if I understand that better, I can be a better strength coach. Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great point. And it reminds me of, obviously I do a lot of work with Joey Burton
who's a local
Yeah.
skills trainer here. Awesome guy. And I've learned so much from him. But I think some of the best conversations that we have are when he's talking in his terms, and then I can help him understand that using the way I look at things. Like, I think that's really valuable for them because they'll say, man, this guy just can't seem to do this exercise. But then you, with your background and biomechanics and the things that you know, when you can like kind of reverse engineer that and say, okay, well, based on what I've seen with this guy, here's why he can't. Now let's come up with a solution to fix that.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the synergy is so much fun. Like you said, I'm a nerd when it comes to this stuff. So I love learning about it. And I love just talking shop and, okay, well, what are you seeing? This is what I'm seeing. Okay, let's come up with a plan to fix it. So yeah, I love that, man. I think that's the next level of kind of synergy that we're going to see across these sports worlds is we can kind of agree now. It's like, okay, the PTs need to talk to the strength coaches and they all need to talk to the docs and they need to be on the same page. But like, let's all of us from a support staff try and get on the same page with the coaching staff and make sure that we're all kind of speaking the same language.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. I mean, I remember, a lot of people have thrown this around, it's like, hey, you have to see the sport to train the sport.
Yep.
To your point, you could be on the sideline seeing the sport, but you don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, I would add to that. It's like you also have to know the sport. You have to learn the sport. Of course, be on the sideline, watch those skill workouts, watch Joey work and things like that. But you also have to know what you're looking at. It's huge, man. I
love it. So shifting gears just a little bit, talk to me about coaches creating coaches. What does that mean to you?
It's funny, I look at my genesis, right? My evolution. I became a coach because of a coach, right? Yeah. I became a coach because of Lee Taft, right? Yeah. Where I was a youngster and I was trying to make the varsity team in high school, and I trained with Lee. He helped me out a ton, and along the way, I was like, man, this guy's job is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I figured out, it's like, when it came time, you're 18 years old and it's a very difficult decision to make. What do you want to do in college? It's like, hey, Lee, how do I do what you do? And he gave me the information and, the rest is history, right?
Yep.
Where now for me, it's like, it's funny. I've been doing this for so long now. There's athletes I've trained that are now strength and conditioning coaches.
That's cool.
Right. So it's like, cool. It just comes 360 and everything. And so that's like, I think really where you talk to a lot of strength and conditioning coaches, they were once athletes and they have a similar story to me, right? Yep. Maybe they got injured. Maybe they had back issues or whatever. And then they rehabbed and got back, and whoever helped them rehab, they really developed a bond, right? Yep. and a cohesiveness with that person. And then they wanted to do what that person did. And so it's really funny, if you just peel the layers back to strength and conditioning coaches and their background and their history, how they became who they are, it's really because they're a byproduct of coaches that helped them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think this next one will kind of go hand in hand with that. What does it mean to you to pay it forward?
A candle loses nothing by lighting another candle.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's huge, man. It's huge because I think about this, what is my greater purpose? Right. My purpose is to advance Butler basketball every day.
Yep.
Right. To help our athletes, to serve them and take their performance to the highest of levels. But, my other purpose is the community and the stability of the field of strength and conditioning.
Yep.
Right. And imagine if we all fought for strength and conditioning. Right. Imagine if we all paid it forward and helped other coaches, because when you help others, you help yourself.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And so if we help other coaches and help their knowledge, help their experience, help their passion, right, then strength and conditioning improves. Then if strength and conditioning improves, all of our pay improves. Then the job opportunities improve. And then nobody is trying to push anybody out of the way in terms of getting a job. There's a ton to go around.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, paying it forward is I want to give back to this profession that's given me so much. It's been an unbelievable vehicle for me. just in terms of the people I've met, the experiences I've had. And I want other people to share in those same experiences. So I think sometimes, man, we need to love each other more. We need to care about each other more. I think there's a lot of stone throwing. I think there's a lot of competition, right? Yep. Because there's only a few jobs, right? And if we pay it forward, strength and conditioning is only going to get better.
Yeah. I love that, man. And when you sit back and you think about, as a coach, if you've done this more than like 5 or 10 years, right? So you're kind of past that entry level phase. You do this for any extended period of time and you start to think back, man, there were a lot of people that probably influenced you positively that gave selflessly to you to help you get to where you're at. So it only makes sense for you to help and to do that for the other young coaches that are coming up that want to, be in your footsteps someday.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. It takes an army, right? It takes a village, right? and so anybody that says that they did it on their own, I'm sorry, like you're lying.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they're any successful person, anybody that's done something, they haven't done it on their own. They've done it with the help of a lot of other people. So I totally agree with you.
I love it. All right, my guy, big question time. If you could alter the space-time continuum and give young Matt Johnson one piece of advice about training and or life, what would it be?
So I call this the sneaker example, man. Sneakers are a lot like training programs, right? And so, you go to Foot Locker, you get in there and like what draws your eyes because a shoe looks really flashy. It looks like it would, you could kick it, right? And it would go with your outfit.
Yeah.
And then you ask the dude that looks like a referee, hey, do you have a size 12? He goes in the back and he comes out and he says, hey man, unfortunately we don't have a size 12. That's a lot like training programs, right? It might look cool. It might look flashy, right? But it's got to fit.
Right.
And so you got to have this filtration process at which you learn information.
Yeah.
And I would want to tell young Matt Johnson that because that was a mistake young Matt Johnson made. I thought everything looked cool and I wanted to do everything. Oh yeah, I'm going to do that program. I'm going to do that exercise. But then you just figure out, it's like, you know what? You're like, I'm going to put that in the memory bank and we might come back to it. We might try to sneak it into a phase or with this athlete's program or whatnot, but you can't do everything.
Yep.
You can't do everything. So training programs are a lot like sneakers, man.
I love it. And a great analogy too. I've not had an analogy quite like that for that question. So that's awesome, man. All right, dude. Last but not least, we're going to do our lightning round. So for fairly short questions, your answer can be as short or long as you'd like. All right.
Okay.
Number one, I know this is going to be tough, but I want to hear, how are you coping with this season coming to such an abrupt end?
Oh man. It's been hard. It's been hard. I mean, I think about difficult things in my coaching career, seeing our guys. We were about to play Providence in the Big East tournament and them getting the news first that the Big East tournament was canceled because of the COVID-19. And then 2 hours later, hearing that the NCAA tournament was canceled.
Yeah.
Just the tears and, our seniors, it's just Butler history, the last game, whether it be a win or a loss, they would be able to say goodbye. And so, those guys standing up and pouring their heart out and stuff, the hardest thing I've ever witnessed in coaching.
Yeah.
And so I freely admit I was not doing well. I was very down in the dumps about it. And I was down in the dumps because, my guys were and down in the dumps too. You know, and sometimes a coach, like you reflect the emotions of your athletes, right?
Yep.
But you have to shake it. And so, I allowed a couple days to kind of veg out and be down in the dumps about it. But then I got on FaceTime and I was smiling and I was, trying to get them to laugh and just, keep it real with them and stuff. But yeah, man, it was really hard. That's for sure.
I feel you, man. Just to give some context, I mean, there's been a lot of good Butler teams, but this was arguably the best Butler team, and it showed in the national rankings, everything this year. So, you guys were killing it. I feel bad. But number two, to kind of like flip this around and take a positive note to it, what was your highlight from the most recent season? Was there like one moment that really stuck out to you?
Oh man, I have a few moments, man.
Let's go.
It's funny. Like we had 3 buzzer beaters.
Yeah.
where you're sometimes you're just blessed with 1 buzzer beater in like a few seasons or whatever.
Right.
But this season we had 3 in Kansas City.
How many of those were Kamar? At least 2, right?
All of them, man.
Oh
all
my
of
gosh.
them.
He's
All
such a
of them were
big time
Kamar.
player,
Oh,
dude.
big time player, man. Winner.
Yeah.
Highly competitive winner.
Yeah.
And so one was in Kansas City. He hit a buzzer beater to win us the championship out there in a tournament. And then one was Villanova at home.
Mm-hmm.
He hit a 3. And then another one was at Xavier, which is our rival.
Yes.
And that was our last game. So, all in all, man, like, to kind of flip it, from the first question you asked, like, yeah, it was down the dumps and stuff. Like, our season ended like that, but still a pretty sweet way to end the season, buzzer beater at Xavier against our rival.
Yeah, like you said, buzzer beater, but like with a senior hitting that shot, that's a good way. Most seniors are going out on a loss unless you win a national championship. That dude went out with a win. So that's awesome, man. Mm-hmm. Okay, so number 3, I've asked different iterations of this question, but I also I hate asking people that have lived in different cities about what their favorite city is, because then it feels like they're like choosing sides. So instead, I want you to tell me one of your favorite things about each city you've lived in during your college basketball journey.
Oh man. Scranton, Pennsylvania is it's called the Electric City. It's not too electric, but the people there just blue collar, man, just hardworking. Anybody that knows about that area, a ton of coal miners and just the family history there. But I just love the fiber of people. Just a really hardworking group of people, and that just really connected with me. And then DC. Just very, very electric, where I said Scranton wasn't electric. DC just always something going on, always happening. Yeah, I didn't like the traffic, but just love just the vibe there. Just always something going on. Really cool shows, awesome, restaurants, and you had the Wizards, you had the Caps, you had the Nats. Cool sports scene. And then 2 years living in Indianapolis here, man, like. I can say that Hoosier hospitality is a real thing. Yeah. People out here just super friendly. Even the first time I met you, man, just, when we sat down for lunch, like I felt like I knew you for years, and it was our first time meeting. For sure. And so, and it is a sports town too. Like they love their Colts and, and I just love like the passion for basketball too. Just the Hoosiers, they love their hoops.
We do love our hoops, man. That's for sure. All right, my guy, that's great. So number 4, last but not least, what's next for Matt Johnson? What are you working on? What are you excited about? Anything?
Yeah, so for me, I would love to win a Big East championship with Butler. I would love to get back to the NCAA tournament. And, for me, like a big step just in terms of life-wise, like I have a fiance. And unfortunately, the virus has kind of delayed our wedding. Oh, but, no. What's next for Matt Johnson is hopefully get hitched here whenever the virus, calms down.
Yeah, good for you, man. Yeah. Well, Matt, you've been awesome to catch up with today. Thanks so much for coming on. Where can my listeners find out more about you and what you got going on?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter and Instagram. My handle is the same. It's Strength Coach MJ. And I do have a website. I am guilty of not updating it, but it does have a lot of articles and videos on there from the past. It's called strengthcoachconcepts.com.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Well, make sure we get those links in the show notes so people can check you out and follow you and do all that stuff. But again, Matt, this was really great, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Mike.
All right, my friend, that does it for this week's episode with Matt. Sincerely hope you enjoyed it. I just love catching up with Matt. I mean, we're both obviously huge basketball guys. He's a huge student of the game, and he's one of those fellas I feel like his enthusiasm and his passion just come through, right? Like you can't listen to this episode and not be a little bit more excited about working with your clients and working with your athletes. So If you enjoyed this episode, I need one of two things from you. Number one, if you're not a subscriber, my guy, my girl, take 5-10 seconds out of your day. iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify. If you listen to podcasts, take 5-10 seconds out of your day, subscribe so that you know each and every week when a new episode is dropped. Number two, if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Now, take 1 to 2 minutes out of your day. Go to the iTunes store. And I know this may be hard if you're driving or whatever, but set a reminder so that you go on to iTunes and give me a rating, give me a review. These are the simplest ways to make sure that more people get exposed to the show. And ultimately, more exposure means more young trainers, more young coaches are listening to the amazing trainers and coaches that are on this show. They can help guide them and show them the way so that they have a clearer path to success than a lot of us did when we were coming up. So my friend, as always, thank you so much for your support. I truly love and appreciate you. And we'll be back soon with our next episode. Take care.